Perfect. We never know. Okay, so let's get started. We've checked. We're all good to go. We've got our mics working. Cameras are good. Some of us look better than others. So we get started. So tonight we've got Buckland on the agenda. Really looking forward to listening to what you guys have got to say. So let's start off with, let's just introduce yourself. So if we could start first with Smudge, if you can introduce yourself and talk us about a little bit about yourself, that'd be great.
Hey, I'm Smudge. I'm normally known as Sarah on the outside of football. My role at the club is a player within the women's first team, and I also lead the under-10s and take those girls on their start of their journey. I've been at the club now for, it's promised third season, third-ish, depending on the lockdowns, depends on what you call a season, but my third season at the club. I came under Grant Fisher when he was first the manager here. Now we're playing under Jamie Phillips and his team of coaches. And yeah, it's my first venture into the National League in women's football.
Perfect, thank you. George, over to you.
I'm George. I'm the first team goalkeeper coach, and I have the pleasure of coaching the wonderful Abby Bond. I've been at the club for, this will be my third season now, and actually it was Grant that invited me along initially, and from my point of view I've never looked back really. A bit frustrated about how things have gone with lockdown, but from a personal point of view I'm really happy to be coaching at Buckland. I really enjoy it.
Ideal, thank you. Over to Simon.
Okay, I'm Simon. I'm part of the women's first team backroom staff, help the coaching. Been involved with the women's first team for this is my second season, and similar to the other guys, whatever the season now looks like with lockdown. Originally got involved to help behind the scenes before taking my first steps into the women's coaching role. But also alongside my first team duties, I also help Smudge manage and coach the under-10s at the beginning of their pathway, and also manage the under-12s and coach them as in their second season through their pathway journey, hopefully up to the first team one day.
Perfect. Intro's done. Excellent. So we've got a few questions to go through tonight, and we will veer off. I'm pretty sure we'll veer off with the type of people that we are, that we're going to delve into certain things. So whoever wants to get us started, a couple of things I want to look at. But first of all, can you give me your experiences in a female game? And when I say female game, I think it's really important that if you've been involved in girls football and then leading into women's football, that's an important part later on. So could you give us your experiences of when you first entered a female game and how you think it's changed since when that was? Who would like to go first?
I'll go first.
Perfect.
If that's okay. Shock. So I first got involved in the women's game. I was thinking about it today. I used to be the academy goalkeeper coach at Airdrieonians in Scotland, and after matches the women's team used to play, and I used to stay and watch them. So that was my first experience really of women's football, and I watched Airdrie ladies play, and then I had the good fortune of watching Glasgow City play because they used Airdrieonian Stadium as their home ground. So I watched a lot of football in the women's game when I was in Scotland, but I had never actually been involved from a coaching capacity, and it was always something that I thought I would like to do. And when I came back to Somerset about 5 years ago on a more permanent basis, I got involved with Ilminster Town, the men's team, but the women's team I did some coaching with the goalkeepers, and I regularly watched the women's team play, and I know the manager Chris Stuckey really well, and I really enjoyed watching them play. I enjoyed working with the goalkeepers, and a goalkeeper called Abby Bond also joined us, and she joined us for training, and I also watched Abby play a few games for Ilminster ladies, And as I got to know Abby a bit better, she mentioned me to Grant Fisher, and Grant invited me to come along to a game and do the warm-up with Abby. The first time I saw Buckland women play, I was on holiday in Cornwall, and I went to watch them play at Launceston, and it was fun. They were fantastic. I couldn't believe what I was watching. The whole setup looked really professional, and so Grant said to Abby, "Tell me to come along and do a warm-up, and we'll see what he's like." So I warmed Abby up against Downend Flyers one Sunday, and from there on, the rest is history. I joined the club, and I really enjoy it. And actually, moving into the women's game for me has been one of the most enjoyable experiences in football. And I've been involved in football all my life in parallel with my other profession, but I can't put into words the pleasure I get from watching really good female players perform and getting opportunities to work with one of the best goalkeepers that I think is around in the Southwest region has been fantastic. And just also seeing the work that people like Simon and Smudge do with the girls at youth level, it's been a revelation, and I really, really enjoy it. And so I have a lot of time for the women's game. One of my best experiences recently, I went to the Women's World Cup in France to follow Scotland, and fantastic. It was fantastic. It was really great. I don't think I've been to a better tournament, to be honest. So my experience of women's football has been really positive from the moment I started watching it, and from the moment I started getting involved in the coaching side. So I have only high praise for it from my point of view.
Perfect. Ideal. That'll lead me on then, because we'll come back to that in a moment. So we're going to touch on the changes between when you started and now a little bit later. But I think you touched on it there, how much has gone on since. If Smudge can talk about sort of what it's been like for you, because you've got the added sort of bonus of coming from a player, obviously then into the coaching. If you can expand on that and sort of talk to us, because obviously we've not been through that. So can you talk to us and expand on what it's been like when you first started? How did you start? Was it with girls team? Was it with boys team, etc.? And then how has it transpired into where you are now, please?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I took up an interest in football probably when I was about 5 or so, and I went along to Alan Slough's soccer school or something like that, and I was the only girl in the group, and you just get ridiculed by the boys, especially if you like start beating them and things like that. So they used to hate it. But throughout primary, I think I did like maybe one football tournament. We entered a girls competition at South Dartmoor, but that was it. It was no joining teams or anything like that. So I had like obviously my first experience of actually playing was when I was probably about 5 or so, and then that stopped. And I didn't really get into football properly until I was probably about 11, 12 when I started secondary. And the group of friends I had at school were obviously very, very sporty. And they started having a kick around on the Astro and things, and we just kind of got into it together. So one of the parents of one of my friends thought they'd start up a team, knowing that we had enough of us to play a 7-a-side team. So we actually formed Totnes Girls back when, like I said, when I was about 11, 12. And then it kind of just went on from there. Obviously at school we started doing a lot more girls football because we kind of went into the sessions as our team. My little group of friends kind of formed the teams, and we had players add in from different directions and different age groups and things. And we stuck together for quite a few years until we went into senior football, so into women's football. And that's when we started breaking off. Obviously, people find different interests. Some of us stayed in the game, some of us didn't. And then from there, I joined Totnes Women, or Totnes Ladies, I think they were called back then, Totnes Dartington. And I remember I always played as a midfielder when I was a kid, and played on the wing, left wing, and running up and down, crossing the ball and scoring the goals, whatever. And then I joined the women's team, and they stuck me as centre back, and I just didn't understand why. And they're like, because you can tackle. I'm like, pretty sure I can't. So it was the transition from the youth game to the women's game was quite a jump. And I remember we got invited to join in, and with like some of us players that thought, you know, we will continue into the ladies' game, and we played Dawlish. And I've never been so terrified on a football pitch in my life. I just remember like, having the ball at one moment, and then I just got sandwiched, and I was like, I'm not sure this was for me. So at that time, I was kind of contemplating whether I was going to continue or not, because I also did athletics and tennis as well to county level. So I had other things I was interested in as well as the football. But yeah, it kind of just grew and grew, and I stayed at Totnes for a couple of seasons. We're league champions. And then with my tennis in particular, I started off helping with some coaching with my coach that coached me. And I thought, I quite enjoy the teaching side of the game as well. And, you know, through Totnes, I did my level 1, never used it. And then when I graduated out of uni, I'd signed up for a sports development expedition out in Kenya. And that was the first time I taught football. And ironically, it was myself and another female. And we taught the boys out there football, and they were kind of like, well, hold on, mate, we've got females coaching us. That's not right. And it took us to go out and just have a kick around with the lads, just to show that actually we can play football. We do know what we're talking about. And we built up respect from the boys really, really quick, because, you know, we just get stuck in as if it was, you know, it didn't really matter, and we didn't really care. And we held a schools festival, and our team actually won it. We had the head teacher come out and shake our hands and go, oh my gosh, it's the first time we've ever won this. And, you know, they were really over there. Most of the children we worked with and the players we worked with were actually Muslims. So obviously having a female coach doing what they perceived as a male sport was massive, but to get the acceptance was just incredible. And lots of people they didn't realize the head teacher would probably come out and do that with us. So that was really cool. So that kind of started getting my interest up in actually getting into the teaching side of things. And then a few years ago, after I'd been coaching tennis for many years, I thought, actually, you know what, I'll give my level 2 a go. And that's when I got in contact with Select Soccer and Buckland, and just to see if there's any coaching opportunities that came up, and initially just to kind of help out really. And then that's obviously led on to me now leading up the girls academy at Select, and taking on, at the time it was the under 11 girls and the under 9s, but I've now stepped away from the under 12s to focus on the 10s and obviously my own playing experience. But yeah, so I kind of got into it because there aren't many female coaches. In tennis, there weren't many female coaches. And, you know, I think sometimes people don't realise how few role models we actually have in these, especially male-dominated sports. And I think it's just really, really important that actually, you know, why can't we teach? There's no reason females can't coach. You know, we can play, but there's no reason why we shouldn't be given the same opportunities the males should be given. Because you go to primary schools and most of the teachers are female. So, you know, it's always been in our nature to teach as females. But yeah, so I just thought I'd give it a go, and I haven't looked back since.
Awesome. That's really interesting, because that was one of the things I was going to ask, is that if you look back at when you were coming through primary, secondary school, I was going to say to you, who were your role models? Who did you look up to? Who tried to put you down pathways to improve? Because I presume the pathways weren't really there compared to now. So, no. I mean, people to be able to look up to you and others that are coaching, that's something that obviously you didn't have, but you still managed to try and break down some barriers there. So who did you look at? Who was looking after you? Who was showing you the right way back in?
When I was at Totnes, we had a couple of female coaches. One was Tony Crook, and she was just fantastic. She was the first coach I had when I arrived at Totnes, and she's not a very big lady, but she's just a powerhouse. And you know, she knew exactly what she wanted. She made sure we gave what she wanted. And yeah, I guess she was kind of it in the football sense in a way, because I've always been really poor at watching sport. So like tennis, I would never watch tennis. Always found that boring. Love playing, love coaching, found it boring to watch. So I was lucky there, I guess lucky in the way to say I had a female coach me tennis, but otherwise it's always been, you know, sport in the world that the sports that I've chosen have always been male dominated. So, you know, to find female coaches has actually been quite few and far between, really.
Definitely. And would you say that's massively changing now for the better for role models?
I think it's getting there. I think there's still a lot of work to do to get females to go into coaching, and I think a lot of the work needs to be done on finding out why females don't go into the teaching side of things. I think that's the most important bit, because there's so many more opportunities with like grants and things like that now for the females to get into it, but I don't know. I think it would be more important to find out why they're not converting from the playing into the coaching. But I think because the way the environment's now changing, especially for the young players coming through now, I think that by the time they become old enough to coach, I think we'll see masses more females
Plenty more
coaching.
hopefully.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm gonna follow on from that. So we were speaking about their sort of journey that you had to have, and obviously, you know, we're not talking loads and loads of years since, but now we seem to have a lot more girls wanting to play football and a lot more opportunities. So I'm going to move on to you, Simon. So I'm just going to unmute you now and move on to yourself. You touched on it earlier regarding apologies. Touched on it regarding earlier the Buckland girls. If you could just expand on that and just tell us, well, one, first and foremost, why you felt that was the need to do that, and why you've done the age group that you've done and how it's been, and just explain on what the plans are for that, if you could.
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, I think as a father, I'm very similar to a lot of fathers. That have kids that are interested in football. Kids just happens to be a girl who's really passionate about football, lives and breathes it through the whole lockdown schooling. She hasn't been out of a football kit every single day, even wearing a Buckland kit most days, to be fair. And I got involved literally with the Buckland youth, as well as the other youth side that I do, because of her interest and her passion for it. She was too young to join Smudge's team originally, but yet she wanted to go to all the games. She wanted to be part of it. She even went down and did the warm-up with the girls. And she just wanted to be part of that team culture. And, you know, as any father would do, just wanted to assist and help. And then, you know, I saw the opportunity that Smudge presented me to come and assist her with then the under 12s, and which are now obviously playing in the under 12, the under 11s back then, which are now playing in the under 12s. And it was just great to be at the beginning of those girls' journey and try and give them some of the experiences that I've had, some of the passion that I've had for football through the years, and try and give them the head start of what they needed within the team sport. And then eventually, as they moved up the age group, we had some of the younger girls like Rebecca and another couple coming through. So we started the under 10s as well, which really started that pathway for Buckland, certainly to have the girls at the youngest level, having inspirational coaches like Smudge and people who are dedicated behind the scenes to try and push them through and help them through it.
Brilliant, ideal. So I'm just going to bring you guys back. I just want to look at now, most of you through different parts in your life have had some coaching, whether it's been with some boys or some older adult teams for male. I just want to now look at the difference in your opinion, and obviously it's a game of opinions, just to look at what you think has been missing for the development of girls. So it's a big topic. Compared to the boys, if you've been in around clubs that are running, you know, boys teams, why do you think that sometimes they're a little bit reluctant to run girls alongside? Why do you think that potentially it's taken a lot of sort of hard work by the likes of, you know, going back, seeing what Smudge has done and trying to break down barriers? What do you think is missing, for your opinion, for the development for girls at the moment? Who would like to start? I don't mind. I think
if I can start off on that one, I think sadly, I think some of those barriers are still there within many clubs, locally and probably nationally as well. The focus is always on the boys' pathway, going through to the boys' first team and the men's first team. And it is, you know, that's where the majority of clubs' focus has to be a lot of the time, because that's their bread and butter, or that's how they perceive their bread and butter to be. And be it through funding, be it through their perceived success. And even now, I think there's still a lot of barriers that need to be broken down from the girls' pathway, that they are, you know, football players in their own rights. and they should have the same opportunities.
Ideal. George? You just have to unmute yourself. Sorry, George. I've muted you by mistake.
You hear me now?
Perfect.
Yeah, I think Simon makes a good point there. I think clubs, a lot of clubs like the notion or concept of having women's football, but I think they need to do a bit more on occasions to be fully supportive of that notion. Again, the point that Simon made, that the bread and butter for a club is still seen as the male side of the game. I think that's true in a lot of cases. I think things are certainly getting better, but I still think there's a little underlying current in society in general that the product is seen as inferior and the athlete seen as inferior in some way. And from my point of view, from working with the players at the level that I'm at the moment, I can assure you, and I can assure people, that the product's not inferior, nor the athlete. And in fact, the athletes are, I mean, I keep calling them athletes because I think it's a good way of describing them, because that's what they are. You know, I should just call them footballers, really, because that's what they are, they're footballers. And I think there are a lot of good footballers playing the female game. And I've got over I've dealt with the fact that female footballers and male footballers are physically different, but what they bring to the game is, you know, very similar. The same passion, the same determination, the same will to win, the same will to progress, and the same effort goes in. But I still think that for lots of clubs, they need to buy into it a bit more. Well, a lot more in some places, I think, a lot more.
What do you think holds them back, George? Do you think it's facilities? Do you think it's, we'll come on to money in a minute, because money hopefully is one of the big things, but what is it that you felt that you've come across that you might have spoke to somebody and give your views, and you're obviously very passionate about the women's game, but you've probably had some comeback of other people not being so positive as you. So what are reasons they give? Why do you feel that they don't do it as much as they should?
I think that they're not seen as a priority within the club, and the game they play is different, and it requires less to be played, if you understand what I'm saying. So some clubs think that the female teams, yeah, it's football, but it's not real football. So they may not need as much access to the pitch as the men's first team do. You know, and I'm not talking about Buckland, I'm talking about other clubs that I've worked with or that. So they may not need as much of the facility, let's say, or they can do what they've got to do with less of a facility. And I think facility and environment's a massive thing, really, and that's a big obstacle sometimes for helping female footballers at all ages progress, from the very young ones to the senior players. Facilities is a big issue, I think. Money as well,
yeah,
but facilities is massive, I think.
I think for me, facilities, because it come up with somebody I was talking to the other day, that if we're looking at a lot of, there's so many boys teams out there, junior teams, that when you start to broach that subject of why have you not got any girls teams, or why have you not started that strand, you know, within that club, and you're probably playing, well, we know you're playing catch up to a lot of these bigger clubs that are running boys youth teams. So you're always going to probably fight that they're going to look at themselves as being established, where we need to work out how we can change that. Because like you said, there's no point having a token gesture of putting a tick in a box, one team coming in at the girls and getting a quarter of a third of a pitch and saying off you go. So Yeah, I don't know how we get around that, but I think that will be one of the biggest problems is, yes, standalone girls teams would be amazing to do, but that's very, very difficult. Whereas we want to try and attach more girls teams surely to already established clubs. But I think you hit the nail on the head. If they've only got X amount of facility space, are they going to then have that conversation, which in my mind they should, that they need to cut what the boys use and give it fairly? Or are they going to try and shove them in a corner somewhere, which is what you said is, likely to happen? Smudge, what's your thoughts? You might have to unmute yourself because I'm trying to just stop it connecting.
I think as obviously a female in the game, as both a player and a coach, I think I agree with what the lads are saying, and I totally agree with facilities. I also think very much so at the moment, the female game is very much a tick box for people. So clubs are trying to make sure, obviously, the minorities and things like that are ticked, and female football, let's get that quickly in without actually taking consideration. Actually, there are, like George said, actual footballers that want to play. I think it's a known fact females like to socialise, and you're going to have a lot of social players, but you're also going to have a lot of serious players. You've got in the leagues that we're in, you've got us, Exeter, you've got Argyle, Torquay just below us. So a lot of local clubs are at a very, very similar standard now where they're actually competing properly. And it's not just, for example, we don't just go down the road, to go and play a 90-minute match. We're traveling to Southampton. Last season, we were at Southampton 3 weeks out of 5, including Cup. It was like we lived there. It's not, and I know like Argyle got to like MK Dons and places like that, Watford's. And, I think it's awareness of how quickly the game's grown. I don't think everybody's always understood that concept of how quick this game has grown in the women's sport. And obviously rugby is another one that's also increased massively as women's rugby. They're the two biggest growing sports for the females in this country currently. And I don't think it's always shown the respect that maybe now is time it should be shown. I also think, and this will be controversial, especially in a pro room of guys, but I also feel there are, don't get me wrong, there are some coaches that are phenomenal coaches in the women's game. They understand their players properly. They know how to relate to them. They know how to get the best out of them. But I also feel that there are a lot of coaches in the game that feel that actually if I attach myself to a women's team, that'll get me myself noticed to be able to get the next best male job. And I think that is actually having, in certain places, having a detrimental fact on teams folding, especially at a local level. I think a lot of teams have folded because actually maybe they haven't got the right people in place as the coaches, the managers, which is actually losing the interest of the players that are playing for them. And obviously then those teams then fold, and then that's a setback again for the women's game, because you're like, well, that's another team we've now lost, even though we're trying to improve the amount and grow the amount of teams playing. But I think, yeah, I like George said, I think facilities is a big one though. Because, for example, our training isn't great. We've got loads of lads playing before us. We come on training, but we've only got a section of the Astro. Yet the men's team come on and bam, they've got the whole Astro and a half, straight away. But we're down to an hour of training, and it's kind of like, but we're actually a higher level than our men's team. And, I don't feel that we are given the respect that we should be given, for the level we play at. But I think, it is getting there, and these things always take time. And I think you have to, as much as we would like to knock a governing body every now and again, you do have to say the FA did put a lot of money in a few years back to grow the game, and they're now reaping the reward of that. We've got kids, we run top sessions at Select now where we've got girls, and most of them are girls in it, whereas when I was a top, that would never even cross my parents' mind to go and stick me in a football session, because that's for the boys. And I've got really open parents about what sports we could play as kids and things. But So I think the development's getting there. I just think with a bit more respect from those, not only within the game, obviously those that are in clubs and chairmans and, you know, chair people of clubs and everything, and facility managers and things, and actually look at the game as the game of football. Because ultimately football's football. Si knows that saying, that the football's round, whether, you know, you're men, female, kids, whatever, we still play with, you know, round football. And yes, the women's game has differences in it. Of course it does. With females, we're going to have some differences, but then, you know, Pep Guardiola doesn't play the same way Klopp plays, and, you know, they don't play the same way Mourinho plays. They all have their own styles, and it's just how you adapt to those styles and make it inclusive for everybody.
I think you're spot on there. And sorry, just quickly, the situation of back in, when we touched on earlier, when you went to Totnes, you know, you probably didn't have the huge opportunity at different clubs like we do now. But I think there is that myth of, it's a bit of a jolly up, you know, they're coming in, it's a bit social. You've also got there's so many different levels now to the game. So yes, if you want to make it a social one and want to have a knockabout with your friends, just like the males do, there's no problem with that, because there's leagues that will supplement that. But also, like you just alluded to, that you've also got some fantastic clubs in the area that are playing a real good level, and then you want to continue that. So there's something for all abilities. So I think it's really important that, for my opinion anyway, that you just want that level playing field from a club, because I think you're right that it might just be a tick box sometimes. And it's the coaches scenario as well of looking at stepping stones to try and move in. You're not naive as players, you know that's a fact. You know that people will do that. So, you know, players aren't stupid, you know, and they vote with their feet and they take the change room with them. And I'm sure that you guys have got stories galore on where that's happened. It only takes one bad apple and you could be, you know, starting a whole team again. So I agree. Simon, I don't know what you're going to speak about on that. I was just going to look at then from you guys. It's echoing back in it. Apologies. I just mute you guys again while I ask this next one. I was just want to look at, and whoever wants to jump in here, and Simon, if you got some bits on that last one, please feel free to chirp in after this. Is that I want to look at now what your club, because you can only, I presume, talk about your club from outside to in, knowing all the bits, is that what's in place, what we're looking at for the girls now stepping into women's football. How does it look? What are the clubs doing? And to give Buckland as an example, what is their plan for the girls that you're doing at the younger year groups, and how you bridge that gap?
Yeah, I'll jump in there to start with, and shall I on that one, guys, if that's okay? So I think, you know, looking at our own club, and as you said, Oggy, that's all we can do. You know, we can just look inward at what we're doing and try and do the best that we can. So be it with, you know, currently the Buckland has an under 10s, under 12s, under 14s, and then they first team senior ladies playing in the National League. Obviously, we can only do our best to lobby the club, rally around, find coaches, find committed people, find good committed people, to inspire our youngsters. And certainly, Smudge alluded to it earlier, you know, it's great for these players to have role models. And one thing I'm very passionate about is actually finding young female coaches to actually come in at a young age, at their young playing age, but also a young development coaching age. So we've got two of our young first team players that are now involved with the under 10s and 12s, who are just starting out on their coaching journey. And they're only 17 and 18 respectively. So they're really young to be getting into the coaching. And that's so that the girls at the young age can really see there is a link between the women playing in the National League and being a 10-year-old girl just starting out. And I think that's so important, that we've got to show these girls coming through that there's something they can aspire to be, and almost have those idols at a local level, someone to look up to. I think that's so important. And then, as I said about lobbying, we've got to lobby the clubs, we've got to lobby the local community to, once these girls step up the age groups, to then fill in the below age group and hopefully bring in these coaches to start them off as well, so that you get a steady stream. So if it was this year, it would be under 10s, 12s, 14s, 16s, a development team to blood the younger players through. Because I think Smudge mentioned it earlier when she went into, I think it was Totnes, and got thrown in at centre back because she could tackle, and then being sandwiched between women. When she's obviously a girl herself coming into that age group, it can be a daunting thing. So we need somewhere to blood these girls through so that they don't lose interest. Because that's the big difference I've seen between the men's game and the women's game, is that I think girls lose interest for whatever reason around the teenage years. Different interests, different hobbies, different ideas of what they want to do. So it's how we can really gain their trust, gain their interest, and keep it going forward. And that is not making that step too big. It is giving them somewhere to go, which is achievable.
Anyone else want to add to that?
Go on, I will. Yeah, no, I agree with like the role model and showing the girls what they can do. So obviously with the 10s that we work with, we try and involve them with the women's games as much as possible. So we've had them as mascots. We've had them do a bit of commentary whilst we were doing a cup match or something like that. And, we were getting them to vote on their favourite player of the day and things like that. And it's just getting the girls involved in that kind of situation so that actually they go, well, that could be us one day. And like So said, we use the younger players in the first team as those role models to come down and do some coaching, because the kids love it. So George and Bondi came down and did some goalkeeping with our goalkeepers and all the players last season, and the girls absolutely loved it because they were like, okay, well, we've got first team coaches here. And and for those girls locally, within our club situation, they're obviously the pinnacle. Like, they're the top players at this club. Like, that's what we want to be. And and I mean, I personally find it difficult sometimes, obviously, both being the coach of the girls and then also being a player, because obviously they want to come and watch me, and then I'm thinking, oh my gosh, okay, well, I've got my coaching head on, but actually it's me as a player now. And so I find sometimes personally that quite difficult to not have merged so much. And I do find as a player that can put pressure on myself a lot more. Bear in mind, they're my future players, if that makes sense, because obviously I coach them. So I do find it difficult sometimes, but I also love the fact that the girls want to come and watch us. They want to know what's going on. When are you playing at home next? We had a couple of girls, so they wanted to come to our away matches. And, these are under 10s. Like, we're not going to take you up to Southampton, but they wanted to be part of it. And I think to get that excitement at their age is awesome, because it's like, well, okay, maybe these kids are actually going to stay in this game a lot longer than, a lot of kids that are like, well, my mum and dad just dragged me out here to get some exercise. And, and I think we can say with the under 12 girls that we've got, it's very much a social team now. You've got one or two players that want to really focus on their football, but the majority are there because they're there with their mates. And I think it's really important as coaches and a club that you go, okay, they may not be the next first team, but they might be the development team that you have as your second team, but actually under 10s, and several of those players will become your first team players. And it's ensuring that we cater for both those types of players, but to create, like so that pathway so that we can go from 10s right up to the first team. And it's not under 14s, then they go into under 15s and under 16s, then, oh my God, now I've got to go to National League. It's having more of a, so I think like by having the development team below us would be ideal at the club, because we can put them in a local league. We can get the young kids that are just coming out of the junior sections some experience of playing senior players, because it might be they play against old players like me. And, it's not, I'm not going to go easy on the young kid just because you're 16 and just turn up to women's football. If you're competing against me, you're competing against me. And, other players might go, well, you're young, we'll let you off. But then you've also, like I say, got us older players that go, no, you're in it to play. And, and I think it's really important that gap's bridged before they have to jump right into National League level, which is obviously, unless obviously you've got the players that can play at that level. But it is exciting, the buzz that I think the club's starting to get around the women's team from the younger players that we've now got, and especially as some of our younger first team members want to coach those future players.
Brilliant. Awesome. That's bringing me on lovely, that is. That's bringing me on lovely, because I want to talk about that that leap between what we just mentioned, the under 16s. So first of all, I definitely understand what you're on about, Spudge, from playing to coaching. Hence why I stopped stopped playing, should I say, early doors as soon as I started coaching, because I didn't want them to see what I was like doing. So so I stopped that, nipped that in the bud early doors. So I want to look at now, and I'm going to bring George in, if I may, because looking back at when you were there 3 seasons ago and when Grant was there, and I know that management had changed since. Have you had privilege to, like, what's been said since you first joined the club? And for me, what are Buckland's plans? And has that changed since you've arrived, going back 3 years? Because the bit that I want to touch upon there is following what Smudge said, is that we've just set up, and for the ones that know, we've set up a post 16 at Torquay Academy that we've tried to merge and create that link with Buckland Women's. But I found it that I'm dealing with 16, 17, 18-year-old girls that, again, I think this comes down to understanding that the jump from them playing in an under 16 team that might have been social, like Smudge said, into then trying to play in the first team is a ridiculously big jump. And the girls out there, one, they need to know that, and two, that if they then don't have that opportunity to go into the first team, are we losing loads? Because, you know, we talk about it now, like development teams, not everyone has them, you know, not everybody's got that opportunity. So I think that's a real key area, that the more college programs that I see up and running, and us included, you know, where do we find them to play? Where do we place them? Because the reality of, you know, we got Lolly that is at Buckland and at Torquay Academy, you know, she's had a great step into that sort of level, but it's a tough jump, and she's just on the fringes now. So, you know, that they're not all going to be at the level ready to jump in. So if you could, George, and you might know bits, you might obviously not been privy to them, but if you could expand on any bits that you might have been privy to from since joining the club, that'd be great. You might have to take yourself off mute though.
You hear me?
Perfect.
Yeah.
All
so one thing that I've noticed in particular over the past 2 seasons, when I came first to Buckland, we had a development squad. I'm sure Simon and Smudge will correct me if I'm wrong. We had a squad, a group of girls who trained at the same time of us, alongside us, and I was aware of them as being the development squad. But interestingly, when I came first, not many of those girls players I saw play first team games for whatever reason, and they almost appeared like a separate entity, which I found surprising. So much so that now we don't have a development squad, and that group of players who were associated with the club have gone on and become something else. So from a coaching perspective, there is a huge gap at Buckland to fill when you're looking for players to take the step into the first team. So I think programs like yourself, probably up at Pro Direct as well, that there are opportunities there for that age group, 16 plus, to continue their development, learn the game, and then there's a chance to go elsewhere and play, hopefully. But from a club's perspective, I think we're missing an opportunity. That we have people working hard with teams at 10, 12 and 14. And I think Smudges make great points that those young girls, even at the level they're at, they want to see the first team. They want to see that I could get to that level. And I think what they try to do with bringing the girls to, I think that's really, really important in football. Whether you're a female or a male player, you want to see what you can aspire to. So I think there's a lot of good things going at Buckland, getting the youngsters involved, encouraging them to come to games, inviting them to games. as coaching staff, and I also think as senior players, we could probably do a bit more to help that out. I think, you know, for example, I'm thinking about myself now. So I'm the ladies' first team goalkeeper coach. I think possibly I should be doing more coaching with the really younger goalkeepers. And as a group of players, we have some really talented players who could probably do a bit more to help out with the youth development. I know things come down to time and people's lives and, you know, energy, but I think that's something that we should, or the club should look into, because you need an identity as a senior club so as that younger players can aspire to that. I've always thought that, you know, you need that identity, and the identity of the club encompasses what the senior players and senior coaches do for the younger players, not the other way around. That's what I think. So if you've got talented coaches, talented players, then you should be encouraging those people, to get involved more with the youth level. That's what I think. However, the difficulty sometimes comes when you, as a female club or entity, are under the umbrella sometimes of a bit another identity, and so it's difficult to take your agenda forward because you're always thinking of, you know, again it goes back to where can we do this, when can we do this, will you facilitate us to do this? So there's that sort of background voice all the time saying we would like to do more, but we're attached to something that may not allow us to do more. At the same time, there has to be a willingness on the coaches and senior players to get involved, really. Because I remember the night I came with Abby to the session down in Teignmouth. It was fantastic, and it was fantastic because there was loads of players. There was a lovely facility. The pitch was flat. There was loads of goals. There was a lot of coaches. The girls were really enthusiastic. You could tell they loved their coaches as well. They were very welcoming, and I actually really enjoyed it. And I went away that night and I thought I should do more of this, really. Sometimes I wish I didn't live in Ilminster. I wish I lived in Paynton or Torquay or South Devon, because travelling's a nightmare it's not a nightmare, but it's an issue, really. And I reckon I would do more if I was a bit nearer, you know. So I think that as a club, there's a lot to do at Buckland, really, in bringing on players. But there's a huge bit missing, and that's the team below the first team. Massive. That's an issue, I think, because otherwise, where do you get your players from? You're scrabbling around sometime, or do you know what I mean? And if you want to grow your own players, then you need a pathway, 12, 14, 16. Do you know, you need that pathway as well. And Buckland's, there's no denying, the women's first team are at a decent level of football. We're playing some top teams in our league, Southampton, you know, Exeter City, all teams are good. And interestingly, some of the other teams, when you look closer at them, they have much better pathways than us, and they're much more clued in as to where they're going, how they're developing. So that, I think, despite all the good things that are done, there's a lot more we could and should be doing, with no question about that. No question about it.
Perfect. I think you hit the nail on the head there, that for me, it is such a big jump, but it comes down to that conversation with the club again about space, facilities, back to where we were with the younger kids as well. So the strange bit is that if you're trying to get, I suppose, an equal level playing field, that if you look at Buckland as an adult setup, their model of bringing players through is known to everybody. They have a young development team, a third team, then they have a men's reserves, then they have a men's first team. So it's not like a club doesn't want that. So it's got to be something a little bit more to it than it's not gone against the club's identity and vision. It's just, how does it fit in? And I think that's really sort of opened my eyes to what you're saying there, whether it comes under the same umbrella or whether it comes under a slightly different umbrella. Because if you look at some, and we've got obviously the other clubs coming up in the next week or so, we've got Plymouth and Exeter, and you mentioned it there and alluded to Exeter in the same league. I come and watched a game where Buckland played Exeter, and they had the young girls that were also at the college program, but also a week before were playing in the development centre and then got moved up. You know, that's what surely every club wants, because else all you're doing is you're going to go over to another established club and keep trying to nick their players, and then you're never going to keep building. So for me, it's key, but it looks like it's not an easy fix. And is it something where, and I never want obviously people to depart and go elsewhere, but you look at these ones that maybe are run under a club badge, but when you delve into it, it might be that it's run by the community centre, the community trust, as opposed to the club like a Plymouth, for an example. You know, it's still under their banner, but it's a separate entity where the focus is on them. So not where do they sit with the men. It's, well, this is women, this is men's, playing under the same badge, but under a different sort of set of committee, etc., etc. So yeah, maybe that's a route, but again, it's got to be agreed by the club, I presume. So perfect. No, it's good insight. Anything from you guys?
I think just jumping on that, I think it goes back to earlier that although obviously the development of the women's game has been rapid, and that's obviously because funding's been put into it to boost up like all these wildcat centres and things like that to get more kids at a lower level playing. And I think it goes back to people haven't been prepared to how quickly it has grown. So clubs have jumped on it to get that women's section or that women's team to tick that box, go, yeah, we've got that. But actually it comes down to the logistics, like you say, of how we're now going to share the facilities then. And, you know, the majority, if not all the women's teams, especially in the local area, don't play on the same pitch as the men do. We're not allowed. You know, we have to go elsewhere. We've got to find other facilities. And some clubs aren't even playing anywhere near where their club actually is. You know, we're obviously fortunate now. Coach Road's been done up, and you know we've got the Astro to play on just down the road from us at Buckland. But other clubs, you know, that the women are travelling well out of the area of where the club is actually situated, especially their men's side. And I think, and I don't know, I feel sometimes that maybe it's almost grown too quickly for people to go, how are we actually going to do this properly to ensure that everybody's got those pathways in place, or it's going to be a success. You know, some clubs obviously done it very well. Some clubs started off very well and have let it slip because it's just part of what they've been doing for a while now, and they've kind of just let other people run it, obviously to detriment of pathways, example Buckland. But I think it's a case of it is the same identity because we're all under the same badges at our clubs, but like you said, because it's different people running it, it is completely different sectors almost. And the clubs, because a lot of them have been established for years and years and years, haven't got those facilities to be logistically able to have a male pathway and a female pathway at the same club, at the same grounds, at the same time. And I think I don't think people realise how quick it was going to take off. And I think that's almost hindered it a little bit. Obviously, it's positive because we're like, yeah, more female teams are out there, but also there's also a lot of female teams that are folding because they haven't got the places to play and the right infrastructure within the club system to play in. So I think, you know, although it's a positive, I think it's also been a hindrance as well.
And I think on top of that, you're not even looking down to the youth level either, you know, trying to share facilities. You know, like you said, it's real great vibe seeing the girls and hearing the stories about how you want to get them in and around the women's first team, and to see for them at 10, 12 years old what it looks like and how they can aspire to get there. If you're not based at that ground, that's a bit difficult. So if you don't feel part of it, it's a bit difficult. So I think that's really key, that it's great, the stuff that it sounds like you're doing. It's just making sure that gap isn't too big, where to get to where they want to get is too big a jump and nothing in between, and then they go by the wayside. I think that's the huge step, isn't it? Awesome. Last couple, we're nearly getting to the hour mark, and I appreciate it's been amazing so far. Hopefully you've got across what you needed to get. It's been great. So for me, I just want to look at two more things, and I want you all to chip in on this one. Apart from money, because if we had a big pot of money, then I'm pretty sure that we could build loads more 3Gs and we could do lots and lots more with millions of pounds thrown at the game, if it's done right. And I will say that because money obviously only works right if the right people have it. So apart from money, what one thing would you like to see to improve the future game in a women's football? Who wants to kick us off?
Go on then.
Simon's in.
Go on then, George. No, you volunteered first, George. Okay, I think from my perspective, I think it is that almost equal opportunity of recognition. It's giving the girls similar recognition to those of the boys, along with the coaching teams that support them. I think if you give the coaching teams the support that they probably deserve and give them a recognition, I think they'd be more inclined to help out on the girls' side, to do more with the girls' side, whereas I think a lot of coaches feel that they have to go into boys' football or men's football to be recognised. So that'd be my one thing, is to recognise the coaches, really.
Perfect, thank you. George, just have to unmute yourself, mate. Nope.
George, tap the microphone bit.
Still not there, mate. Smudge, you got one while George is sorting it?
Just one.
Well, I'm being harsh.
Probably.
If you have to pick one only apart from money, what would you go for?
I would say, obviously, as both a female coach and a player, I would say respect for our game. In the sense of that it is still football. Football's football, whether, like I said earlier, whether you're a child, adult, male, female, football is football. So from a player's perspective, if you still get the jeers around from people going, when they ask you what you do and you say football, they're, oh yeah, I play girls football. Yeah, girls play football same way you play football as guys. So I think respect in that sense as a player, and as a coach, as a female coach, respect, because like I say, I can't obviously speak for you guys out there, but as a female, I feel that we do have to work really hard to prove ourselves. And we've recently done a Zoom call with some parents, and it's taken me a long time to win those parents over, just merely because I'm a female coaching their son. And for me, I find that really hard, because I'm like, well, actually, I'm more qualified than a lot of the coaches that are out there coaching your son. But because I'm female, I really have to prove my worth. And I know Si knows, we've had this conversation before in this discussion, that I feel it's really important that I play at the highest level I can play at for my coaching, to prove that I can coach football, even though coaching and playing is obviously very, very different. And you get a lot of phenomenal coaches that don't play, but you also get a lot of phenomenal players that don't coach. And as a female, I do feel we have to work really, really hard to prove ourselves currently. So more respect and for what our knowledge actually is would be really cool.
Awesome. And I want to touch on it very quickly. Do you feel that is something because there's not enough female coaches out there, or is that because you still think that will be the case, that you're fighting that uphill battle, that it's something that you feel that you need to be? I don't feel you need to be playing higher to become a good coach, obviously, but is that something that you feel that you've had to do just to put that extra bit of weight to it, because people don't look at it as an equal playing field?
Yeah, I think the discussion's always been around with coaches, isn't it? How do top players get straight into top jobs? And you're like, hold on a minute, they've only got like a week's worth of coaching. And I think, in obviously my experience in tennis is exactly the same. I think coaching is coaching, and you know, it's always seemed and deemed that the top players will always be the best coaches. And, you know, like we all know that that's not always the case. And yes, there are very good coaches at the top level playing, and, you know, that's fine. But I think there are also a big pool of very, very good coaches out there that maybe have actually only kicked the ball in the park with their friends, because it's very, very different from playing. I don't think that, I don't really know what I think. I'm not sure. I think it'll always be there. I think there'll always be some discrimination in it, because it's still very much a male dominated sport. And, you know, I personally, I can roll with that. But I do think we as females need to help ourselves. And like I said earlier, I think they need to find out why females aren't going into coaching. I think that's really important to know the whys, not just the how can we get more into it. I think you need to know why more aren't going into it. Because, you know, we can't say, well, you know, we're not being treated fairly if actually we've had loads of opportunity to get into it, but we're not doing it. That, you know, we're not helping ourselves as females as well. But, you know, I think times, you know, some views will change, but other people, you know, they'll keep their views, and people are entitled to their opinions, and that's okay. But it's just, yeah, I think females need to help themselves a little bit as well, in proving that we can obviously do it by taking up roles and getting more involved in the coaching, and not just having dads come down. Because even with the girls that we coach, you know, it's often the dads that bring them. But out of it now, we've managed to get a mums group set up with the mums that bring the girls. So, you know, it's another generation that we're starting to change the views on. And, you know, I think, you know, years down the line, when these young girls become coaches and players and things, time will change, and, you know, views will start changing. But you'll always have some of the views that you get these days. It's just human nature.
Brilliant. And I think you're spot on there as well, is that yes, there is opportunities out there, but it's not a case of forcing people into it that then are just going to not carry on with it. It's a case of finding the ones that want to do it and find out if they don't, why not. So yeah, no, you're spot on. George, you back in?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
There you go. See, I think a big thing for me that would encourage more female coaches to come along is a better form of mentoring for them when they do come along. But I think it's important that we have more female coaches taking on coaching roles, you know, first team coach, manager, whatever you want to call it, even at our local levels. But I also think that we have to have a good people in place to support them when they do that. Because I remember when I first started coaching, and even recently, I've always had that imposter syndrome about me. Although I come across, it's been really, there's always a little, I suppose people have that in general, there's always a little doubt, am I good enough? Is this, you know, and it took me a while to go into my UEFA B license and complete that and, you know, receive that. And then when I was on the course right enough, you think, what am I worrying about? Look at this guy next to me. Do you know what I mean? So there's a little element of that. But I think good mentoring would help with female coaches who are coming through. A big thing for me in the Southwest, particularly in our area, Devon, Cornwall, is a bit more joined up working maybe with some of the bigger clubs, you know, and I say bigger, you know, in parentheses, you know, so Argyle, Exeter, Torquay United, MAP. I think there's something for more joined up work in there, particularly to evolve the game for girls. Things like taster days where you invite all the kids along that might want to try. But the coaches there that day are coaches from Plymouth Argyle, Buckland Athletic, Exeter City, Torquay. So they're all working together. So girls see that actually there's lots of clubs, but we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. Things like that would be helpful, I think, in the future. But my biggest thing is that more female coaches into the game and more mentoring for them with committed and appropriate mentors to tell them, don't worry about your mistake, don't worry your teams, just keep going, life will get better, because it does. Coaching gets better the longer you stick at it. I've found that out.
Brilliant. No, I agree, definitely. And it's funny you say about the players there. I was having this conversation the other week that looking at college programs, we're not blessed with, hundreds and hundreds of girls wanting to come on to college programs. So I think we kill it, because you got us at TA, you got South Devon, you got Exeter College, you've got Plymouth College, that we're all after the same girls, where if we're being brutally honest, we want those girls to go together and be with each other to be the best possible group they could possibly be, and push each other on. But what we'll do is I'll end up with one or two of the girls that want to push on, and so will the other colleges, and we'll end up sort of stifling probably the ones that have got the real drive and ability to push on again, because we don't want to be seen to be helping each other out for the bigger picture, which is, I agree on that on so many fronts. Awesome. The final one, I've got to tie it into this, the future player. So I'm going to put you all into to a gallery view, and I don't know where this will go, but obviously this is the future player podcast today rather than network. So I'm going to ask you, what do you think a future female player is going to look like in 10 years time? How are we looking? Go for it, all of you.
Well, I think what we want is we want positive, confident, technically, physically, socially able female footballers who see football as a huge opportunity for them, not only to enjoy, but also to have a fulfilled career in 10 years' time, and that they're empowered to do that. That's what I think. Educated and empowered to play football at the highest level, whether you're from deepest, darkest in Abbott or Ilminster, crack on, have fun.
I think you're right, George. I think the future player, more athletic, physically fit, mentally fit, prepared, eager, keen. We're seeing it at a younger age already. There's a player that recently, before the lockdown, asked to do the same session again because they wanted to crack it. They wanted to better themselves on that session. Just more committed, more determined, mentally stronger players and physically stronger.
I obviously agree with all like the physicality stuff and the mental stuff, but I think it comes down to passion and the love of the game. Just having these kids now loving the game and knowing that they can go and play to whatever level they want to play at, and understand that those levels are actually now in place for them to play at whatever level they want, and to not be afraid of actually going, you know what, I want to be a footballer when I'm older. And I think that's really, really important. And we're starting to hear the young girls now going, I want to be a footballer. And, when I was a kid, it would be something that was completely laughed at. Now people go, actually, there's a chance. Have you got a chance? Yeah, she can make it. That I think that's really, really exciting that these girls are having an opportunity that, like myself and other players of my generation and older would never probably have even considered, because it wasn't there in place for us. And I think, with the opportunities these girls now have, 10 years down the line, it would be great to do this kind of thing again, just to see where we're at with the game, because I think it would be completely different to where it is today. And, not quite on the men's level, but slowly heading there.
Awesome.
Can I just throw in a bit of controversy there, Robbie? Just while we're talking about future players, and we were talking the other day, Oggy, and I just want to gauge George's and Smudge's opinion on it. So the future player, the future female player, does the future female player have to play in boys' teams, or can the future female players come up through the female-only ranks?
As in future player, future international, future England pathway.
Future international, future professional, future, high-level national league or above level footballer. Can they strive to that accolade just playing in the girls' game, or do they have to venture over to the boys' team independently to be pushed want to be challenged, both physically and technically.
I think because you've got a bigger pool of players now coming in, and obviously kind of it's the age group you're kind of looking at now is the 10s up and like below. I think the more players you have playing the game, the bigger pool of people they're going to play against. So I would say in 10 years' time, you'll start seeing not the repercussions, but the development from now and the evolution in the girls' game. So the 12s and the 14s possibly need to go over to the boys' side to get those areas, the physicality and things. But I think from the 10s, if you've got any 8s out there, you know, the younger the players starting to like our top sessions, those kids will be able to stay in the female game. The pool will be big enough.
You got it, George.
You hear me? I think they don't need to be involved with boys teams if the infrastructure is there to really support them. So by that I mean they have good opportunity to play, good coaching, a good pool of players, competitive leagues that are well organised, and I think that's where they could. I think that's where they should be aiming to get to. And if that's in place for them, then I don't see why they can't progress up through their own pathway to the international level. Definitely.
Perfect. No, I agree. I think at the minute, like we said, we've touched on it, and it's been brilliant tonight, by the way, guys, that there's so much that we still want to happen. There's so much that has happened, looking from obviously Smudge's pathway, from young girls coming through now in their pathway. But we know there's so much more that's going to be coming into place as well. And I think that you hit the nail on the head, that if we look at our younger age groups, we got to appreciate that somebody, and us included in that, have done something wrong if we get 10 years down the line and we can't encourage girls to be going through the pathway just playing girls football. At the moment, I think we have no other choice for the ones that are sticking out, you know, in their development and need that next push. They're going to have to join boys teams, because I think they need that. And like Smudge said, the older ones, that's the only way of getting that next step. So what a great advertisement to try and change that and make sure that we can be a part of that ongoing. So fantastic. I've enjoyed tonight. Hopefully you lot have as well. We've got any parting word you want to say. The floor is yours, as long as you don't all talk at once. But for me, I just want to say a massive thank you. This is the first one, hopefully first of many. And we got the other clubs coming. So you started off amazingly tonight. We've got Plymouth on Friday, Torquay next Wednesday, and then hopefully we just got to work out Exeter's, and that gets the 4 of us off and running, and hopefully we can start to have a little bit more of an impact. We might upset a few people on the way, but so be it. At the end of the day, that's what we need to do, and I'm right at the front of that queue to do that, because let's improve this game for the girls coming through.
I've seen Smudge in a whole new light tonight. That a quiet, calm Smudge is fantastic, and smiley Smudge. Eh?
I'm always quiet, George. I don't know what you're on about.
She's usually out there giving it large.
Because I hope you're on camera, George, is what it is. This is not a comfortable situation right now.
Hey, the bottom line is this: girls need really positive coaches and good people. Surround them with that, and it'll go forward. That's the bottom line. Always. Good people and good coaches. What's that? There you go.
Spot on, guys. Been amazing. We'll leave it there.
My parting shot would be. I've got then. No, it's fine. No, don't care. It's fine. Whatever. No, I think my parting shot is, you know, from a club point of view, from Buckland, Plymouth, Exeter, Ilminster, Yeovil. You know, there's always going to be competition. That's the name of the game at the senior level. But I think if we're talking about the future player and the future of the women's sport, I think there needs to be collaborative working across the local clubs to improve the setting for all.
Definitely.
Spot on. Hopefully this will be the start of it. You got to start somewhere. You got to start.
Hopefully.
Happy days, guys. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Cheers,
Augie.
guys.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers,
See
mate.
you soon.
Bye-bye.
See you soon.
Bye.
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 George has got to try and leave now.